Hey, I'm going to try to make this super quick. This was somebody who was listening or overheard me discussing something with a friend, and I was discussing impact-based public health spending. And they asked me to explain it to them, but I was running to the gym and I couldn't. I promised I would just get back to them, but I figured a video is just as easy, and I will, send the link to this video to him when I'm done, assuming I can find the text message. Okay. So, how do we currently spend? First of all, a full disclaimer about this before we go any further. I am a physicist. I am not a public health expert. Okay. My take on this is based on highly physics related questions. I'm looking at, and I'll explain that as we go further. So my opinion on this is probably just part of it and can be ignored if it bothers you. And you can certainly feel free to use the maybe more conventional, in some cases, concurrent opinions of public health professionals. Okay. But this is an area that I've been working in for a very long time from a physics perspective. So I have some ideas that turns out are not that terribly controversial. It's something that the industry has been the public healthcare industry has been coming to for a long time, and it's been an interesting change over the last 20 years. Okay. All right. So I gave you my disclaimer. This is about impact-based public health spending. I have my little Eureka Rewrite tab here in my wax pencil, so I'm going to give a cool little chart because charts explain things. Okay, here's the metrics. The metrics are, in public health, how expensive is it to treat such and such disease, or how cheap is it to treat such and such disease? And every disease falls on some line between expensive and cheap. So for instance, a very rare type of cancer that requires gamma knife surgery might be kind of very much on the expensive side, whereas treating cholera in developing nations would probably, per patient anyway, would be very much on the cheap side. Okay, so per person, per patient, is it expensive to treat? Is it cheap to treat, or where on that spectrum does it fall? Okay. The second metric is how many people have this disease. Is it a very rare disease? Let me see why I have that on my chart. Is it a very rare disease, so very few people have it down here? Or is it a very, unfortunately, common disease where a lot of people have it? A very rare disease might be a type of neurological dysfunction. A very common disease, for instance, would be diarrhea. People die of diarrhea very commonly in certain countries. Now, there's an overlay above this, which we're going to have to discuss in just a couple of minutes, which is where in the world does this happen? In the United States of America, for instance, or France or England, very few people die of diarrhea. We have industrialized medical infrastructure and people just don't die of it. However, in Haiti, people do die of diarrhea. It's bad. And interestingly, there's an opportunity because in Haiti, there are certain diseases people almost never die of, and not just because they don't get old, but because they live a relatively, at least in some cases, and in some cases not, uncontaminated lifestyle. Okay, so here's the chart. All right, so I'm gonna have to do the best I can here, being a lefty. All right, so I'll make the box. Okay, there's our box. All right, so we have this axis is how many people have the disease. Few people have it, or many? Many people have it. Few, many. Okay, now, is the disease to treat? Is it expensive to treat? Okay, or is it cheap to treat? Everything falls on somewhere in between here. Every disease falls somewhere in between here, between expensive and cheap. and every disease falls somewhere between here, between many people have it and few. Now, you might argue, well, maybe I should flip around these axes. That could be, but there's a subtle desire that we tend to want to stay away from bottoms, from origins of graphs. So there, I would say I chose these randomly because I don't like being influenced by the progression of a graph. For instance, in the stock graph, we tend to want to see it go up, up, up. So we don't want stuff down here. However, in another graph, we might very much, in a case of cost graph, we might very much prefer something down here. So I just chose those randomly. You could set up this graph any way you want. All right. So if we take this as being, just use that dotted line, we can make a really, you can be very accurate about this, where I can find what is the most expensive disease and actually put down a dollar figure per patient. And what is the cheapest disease per patient? And then write down a dollar figure. This might be a couple of bucks for clean water, for some chlorine water for diarrhea. There might be 20 people in the world who have a certain neurological dysfunction, and there might be millions of people who have cholera or malaria. Okay. Now, you try to get an idea. I'm just going to, from my own experience, I'm going to pick some different diseases and put them on this chart just for sake of trying to explain stuff. But you could be very specific about it. You could use math and statistics and actually come up with functional answers. Okay, so we'll choose an easy one. How about diarrhea? Diarrhea is very, very cheap to treat, and it's very common. 1 million people a year, or 800,000 people a year, if memory serves, die of diarrhea. So we'll say that this is a relatively cheap disease to treat, and a lot of people have it. It will be somewhere up around here. Okay, diarrhea. Right? Cholera, I think, is very closely related to that. Although I think in many cases you see them, cholera might be a little bit harder to treat because I think you need something a little more than clean water, although I might be wrong. Doctors would know better than I am. I think they typically prescribe, different medicines, either antibacterials or antivirals. I think it would be antibacterials. Okay, so this might be cholera. Now we'll try the other spectrum. Okay. What's a relatively median disease to treat? I would probably say like heart disease. Well, it's not cheap because you don't just need clean water, and it might be over here or up above, I don't know. And yet a lot of people have it, but I mean, actually, I take it back. It'll probably be closer up here. It's many, many, many people, maybe even more than those. So it might be further up on the chart. In fact, I'm guessing it's closer up there. However, to treat heart disease, you need some, I mean, at minimum an EKG. You're not just going to do it with clean water. Treating it may also be as simple as trying to have the person live a healthier lifestyle, try to get exercise. However, sometimes it's also very expensive. You might need catheters and heart surgery, pharmaceuticals to act as blood thinners, or things to stabilize arrhythmia in the heart pacemakers, things like that. So, I mean, my take is it's a rather expensive disease to treat, but not completely expensive. What's an example of a very expensive disease to treat? I guess that would be a cancer that requires concentrated gamma knife therapy or brachytherapy, you know, something where you need a really large medical infrastructure to treat. You're not just going to do it in a field hospital or in a small hospital in Sierra Leone or something. It's going to take a major medical center. So we'll say something like a certain type of cancer, and I'm sure we'll have to break them down, or we might be able to average out all the cancers. We'll just call it Cancer X. Okay. I don't know which cancer that is, but it's some cancer. We'll call it Cancer X. And it might be relatively uncommon. There might be another Cancer Y that is just as expensive to treat, but it's worthwhile of our investment because there might be a lot more people that have it. Leukemia, for instance, is a lot more common of a cancer. And there's other diseases like, for instance, asthma. Well, asthma is a very expensive disease to treat. I think in the United States alone, I believe our current public health bill cost of treating asthma and chronic obstructive pulmonary disorders, and these is something like $20 to $40 billion a year, if memory serves. I know that's very wide, but I know it was a rather large number. It's rather enormous, treating lung disorders, and they're very common. So treating lung disorders is expensive because you have to treat the source of the problem, which is air pollution. And when you start cutting back air pollution, industry has to pay the bills another way. So it's expensive to treat in that way. And it's also expensive to treat on the per patient basis. You've got to come up with, you know, there's what's an example of an inhaler? Symbicort. is a very effective pharmaceutical, but it's very expensive. I think people in developing nations are probably not going to be able to afford medicines of that expense, although maybe, I don't know the licensing deals they have. Then there's cheaper asthma medicines, and then there's rather expensive treatments involving steroids and meter dose inhalers, little CFC inhalers, and the pulmonizers, the ones that vaporize the water. So I would say that asthma is very, very common and perhaps not quite as expensive as treat heart disease, but it's probably somewhere up here. We'll just say lung. We could continue to do this for a lot of different diseases. Diabetes, different cancers, skin disorders, emotional disorders. So that's a public health care cost. Okay, so at some point we're going to have to ask ourselves, where do we fund these things? All right, now there's a controversy here, okay? Because if you're wealthy, say you're the person watching this now is from a wealthy family, you have to ask yourself, am I going to, and say somebody you love very much unfortunately has a rare disease, am I going to spend my family fortune saving this one life of this very rare disease in this person I love, or am I going to spend my family fortune saving 100,000 lives of a very common disease? The reality is I'm probably going to spend most of my money saving the lives of the person I love, because we're human. It's okay, right? But I'm not talking about private healthcare costs. And I don't think this debate of impact-based public healthcare spending has to do with your private donations, your goals, your ambitions for what you would like to see your wealth heal. The people that your wealth may be healing, though they may be rare, may be very important to you, may be very important to what you would like to see the world become. That's fine. But tax-based public healthcare spending, the people of Luxembourg, the people of Sweden, the people of the United States of America, of Mexico, of Argentina, whatever, some portion of their taxes goes to protect the health of the public at large. So in the case of that, can we create a metric, something like this graph, where we say, let's go for the low-hanging fruit, because this is a public cost. We're going to pick, for instance, let's say our public healthcare costs, our public healthcare funds were in, I'm going to try to find a decent example. Ghana. Okay. Ghana has a very fast developing economy. They still have a lot of progress that they need to make. They are still in need of aid for healthcare and for industrial development. However, the Ghanese have been remarkably adept at turning very little into very much. Okay, so they're a good example of somebody that has some money to spend on public health. How do they choose where to spend it? Well, in that case, it's pretty easy. You're going to see that in Ghana, a relatively small amount of their tax dollars that go to, for instance, work on cholera or diarrhea or malaria. Malaria is probably like right over here somewhere. Malaria is their best bang for the buck. Now, what about, for instance, Andorra? Okay, wealthy country, a banking center of a type in Europe. I'd love to go there someday. The pictures look beautiful. They don't have these kind of diseases. Their diseases are more wealthy people diseases, right? Cancers, heart disease, diabetes, lung disorders. Where do they spend their public health care? Well, they will look at the people in their country and they'll say, we don't have many people in our country that have these diseases. We have people that have these diseases over here. So we'll try to maximize the one over there, and we'll try to choose, for instance, we can't get too carried away with Cancer X, and Cancer X is getting a good amount of private funding anyway. So we need to focus on Cancer Z, okay, or pancreas dysfunction, or whatever a common healthcare problem that people in Andorra are. Okay, United States of America would be somewhere up here. We do get heart disease, and people of Andorra might very much get heart disease and lung. There's no geographical overlay over this chart. These diseases can occur anywhere. However, many of the diseases up here, malaria, cholera, diarrhea, people get diarrhea in the United States of America, however, they don't tend to die of it. Many of these diseases up here are the diseases of developing nations. Haiti, Sierra Leone, Yemen to a lesser degree, Sudan, Namibia to a somewhat lesser degree. You know, these Bangladesh, Malaysia to their problems are unique as are all countries, but Bangladesh is a big one. Places in India, their concerns are very different than the concerns of the United States of America. However, if that's where the geographic overlay comes. Okay, so if these countries tend not to have a lot of money for public health, they're trying to get their industry going. They're trying to get their shipping ports set up. They're trying to get their rail lines operative. They're trying to do the things they need to keep their economy growing. And it's hard to spend money on public health when you're trying to just get the basics. You're trying to keep a roof over your head. It's kind of like, you know, if you're poor, growing up in the ghetto, you might very much want to go to college, but it might be difficult because you might have a lot of bills to pay and keep the cell phone from getting turned off and keep the heat from getting turned off and the water from getting turned off. And if you don't have a base level of wealth, in many cases, it's remarkably difficult to be able to grow your wealth. So that's what many of these countries are like. Bangladesh is a prime example. They struggle with infrastructure costs. And that's where the opportunity comes in. Okay, so we'll go back to Andorra. I'm going to include the United States of America because that's my country. I don't know very much about Andorra, except that it sounds like a really cool country, and I wanted to include it in this because, I mean, it's just such a cool country. I want to go there. Do you ride snowmobiles in Andorra? Because I love snowmobiles, and I want to ride a snowmobile in Andorra. Can I do that? Can I ride? It doesn't seem like an avalanche would ever kill me in Andorra. Like, I'm afraid of avalanches the way that most people are afraid of sharks. I have an irrational fear of avalanches. They just really scare me. Something about, it's like drowning above the water. I can't deal. I just can't deal. It's terrifying. I hope that's never the way I go. Please let me go some way other than an avalanche. Okay. By the way, avalanches are on here somewhere. Let's see. I'm guessing a few hundred people a year die of avalanches in the world. And it's a relatively inexpensive, probably somewhere over here, I'm guessing. Very low, but saving people from avalanches can be very expensive if you're sending out the military to trigger, or it can be relatively inexpensive where it can be very expensive if they have the inflatable pillows and they have the transponders. These may not be things that are available to people in Nepal, for instance. I don't know if a lot of people die from avalanches there, but education, keeping people away from avalanche areas and teaching them to trench something and to know what to stay clear of is relatively affordable. Of course, it can go all the way up to here. Like in Colorado, some years we may have 1 or 2 avalanche deaths, but spend millions of dollars on those. For the search and rescue can be incredibly expensive. So ours might be here, whereas Nepal's might be over here. It just depends. I don't know. I'm sure there's a lot of avalanche deaths that we prevent just by public knowledge and education. Okay, that's a little off the subject. All right, so what does the United States of America, or Andorra, do with their public policy involving healthcare problems that are not within their own borders? We don't have a major problem with malaria. We don't have a major problem with cholera. If somebody gets diarrhea in our country, they can usually get access to chlorinated water relatively quickly. And people tend not to die of diarrhea here. It does happen. It's not common, at least not as common per capita as it would be in a place like Haiti. Now, does that mean we don't look at these and we just focus on the diseases that impact us? To a degree, yes, that's what we do, unfortunately. But that's where the opportunity lies in impact-based public health funding. The opportunity is we can then identify the diseases here and say, we know, for instance, that we want Haiti's economy, Haiti has a big problem with diarrhea, to improve. Because if Haiti's economy were vibrant, it would allow Puerto Rico's economy to improve and Dominican Republic's economy to improve. And the ships would, as my friend Chris says, the ships are all, what was the saying? God, it was beautiful. All ships rise with the tide. Okay. So the United States of America and for a time, for propaganda purposes, maybe 50, 60 years ago, a poverty-stricken Haiti may have served a political purpose. We know now that it doesn't. We knew after the earthquakes, we knew after major public health disasters in Haiti that it doesn't benefit us to have a poverty-stricken country like that, because Haitians are now a major contributor to the United States economy, not just in Haiti, but Haitians in the United States of America. And these are their families, these are their loved ones. So how do we look at our policy? We may say, okay, in the case of diarrhea, this is an affordable problem that we can fix in Haiti. And well, how much did it cost? We might spend as little as $5 million addressing diarrhea in Haiti and come out with a benefit that could be 100 times. I'm just so I don't get political here, I'll just call this disease X, because nobody worries about disease X. They worry about specific diseases. Okay, so this is disease X, and say it's right there. Okay, we may find that funding a relatively small amount for certain diseases in developing nations may produce a 10-fold or 20-fold or 50-fold benefit over funding disease X. Now, unfortunately, the reality of this is, and you know, there's just no possible way in any. This is what makes my opinion, I think, needed on this. Okay, this is what makes my opinion needed, as is what makes the Union of the Concerned Scientists' opinion needed on this. You can't lie with math. The reality is, if you're funding this over here, even for a relatively small amount per patient, more people will die when you don't fund disease X. That's the reality, okay? And we tend to get really emotional about this because these are people we love, and these might be people we don't. But if we're taking some of our public health care costs that we would have spent internally and spending them out, people are going to die here. But there's a long tail. And that's what's going to take some really good computer modeling and some really good doctoral level and postdoctoral level research, is figuring out where that tail is. Because if we save lives over here and increase the economy, for instance, of Puerto Rico and Dominican Republic and Haiti, and we help increase those economies, we help these economies prosper, we're going to see a benefit here too. We'll even see a benefit here. What about the Haitian doctor that would have died at age 3 because of diarrhea, and instead doesn't die because we literally spent $18 on this child to get better? That's the incremental cost of chlorinated water and sanitation systems that benefited this child. And they grew up and they study in medical school in Puerto Rico or Guam, for instance. I'm just picking them out of my hat. I don't know if there is a medical school in Guam. If there's not, there should be. And there should be one in American Samoa too. And if there is, apologies to the medical school in American Samoa. What contribution are they going to make to this? What contribution are you going to make to that? Well, a rising tide raises all ships. That's where the research is needed. But if we take this horse sense approach, I love horses. I really do. I love them. I don't want horses making our policy decisions as to where we spend our public health funds, okay? And when we go by gut instinct and all that, and we tend not to use functional models that actually connect things in a rational way, in a peer reviewable way, in a statistically coherent way, then we're using horse sense. And ideally, we're not horses. We need to improve a little better than that. I mean, horses have it all over us in a lot of ways. You know, they can run real fast and pee out gallons at a time. I've always wanted to do that. And they're wild. You know, they're originally from North America, but then they hunt them to the Paleo-Americans hunted them to extinction. So they became extinct in North America, but they crossed over the Bering Land Bridge. Some like, I don't know, what was it like? The Bering Land Bridge, I guess it was like 20, when they first started crossing back over to the Eurasian side. I think that was like 20,000 years ago or so. So they went extinct in North America. And then when the Europeans brought these horses back over to United States of America and Mexico and Canada and South America less so. I don't know that there were indigenous horses there. There might have been. And they took off, and now we say, oh, these horses are feral. Well, they're not feral in a sense. These genetically, these are the identical horses. There's been very little evolution in the last 15,000 years or so. That horse is the same horse that went extinct. So yeah, it's going to do pretty well in the plains of Nevada, in the high plains of Wyoming and Colorado. It's gonna manage pretty well. It doesn't have to compete with cattle, which it does. So they round them up and then they train them and they turn them into really good pets. They're really good pets. Oh, the burros are so sweet. The burros. What are they? What's a zebra called? Oh, a referee donkey. Is a zebra a referee donkey? I think a zebra is a referee donkey. I don't know. I saw that somewhere. Okay. Well, anyway, all right. So here we go. By the way, this is a Eureka Rewrite tablet. I'm going to demonstrate. All right, watch this. So I just made this really nice graph, okay? Here, I'm going to write out a little thing just so you guys know. Eureka Rewrite. The logo looks something like this. Eureka Rewrite. Okay, so this is paper. It's like organic and all that. Check this out. Ready? All right, watch this. Okay, this is just some coconut oil. Wait, it's our special mixture. It's actually called Eureka oil. All right, so I just smear a little on here. All right, so look, this is not coming off, right? Because I did it with this grease pencil here. All right, so you ready? I probably should have primed the board before use, but it's coming off pretty well. See, check it out. Huh? You can erase it with oil. All natural. There's no volatile organic compounds coming off this. No bad scent to give you a migraine. Just all natural, man. It's just all natural, baby. Look, it's like no plastic in this. It's like metal grommets, all biodegradable. Yeah, baby. Yeah. This is the coolest tablet. This is like, if you bring this to like a meeting and you have this tablet and your competition has like a LCD, like computer connected thing with PowerPoint and RGB color and electrohypnotic modulation of frequency to control the viewer's brainwave patterns and force them into making the decision that you want them to make, this one will still beat it, baby. Because this is like, it's organic, man. It's wax, dude. It's like wax and, oh, man. It's the stuffy stuff. All right. Thanks very much. Let's see if I covered everything on my list. What do we end with? Foreign assistance for certain areas of public health will potentially benefit the country who's making that donation far more than spending that same amount of money on a rare disease in the country. Okay, that doesn't mean they shouldn't fund rare diseases. It means they should just take a little bit, like a tithe. I mean, the religious idea is a tithe. I think a tithe is a nice idea. So say the tithe is 15%. So the United States, when we're funding these incredibly expensive and in some cases rare diseases, when we're using our public health policy, let's take a tithe off the top. 15%, not enough that's going to make an enormous difference. 12%, 18% maybe, that would be nice. Nice number symbolizing life. And get it to the people who desperately need it. like in Haiti and Ghana and Bangladesh and Afghanistan, because we broke it, so we bought it. Okay, places like that, and fix them up, you know, because a rising tide lifts all ships. All right, we good? Oh, here, this is funny. So amusing. Huh? Can't even see it. It's supposedly lit up. Oh, here. Isn't it crazy? This thinks it's such a crazy thing. It's so funny though. Like, it's like whoever thought of that's a genius. Just a genius. They're like, we'll take a light switch and make it run on batteries. All right, here's something cool. Here. Do you know what that is? I've probably already asked everybody here. Do you know what this is? What is that? Oops. Okay. I will send a prize out. Okay. If you guys watch this video, it might not happen for 15 years. Okay. But the first person who comments with the correct answers to what this is will receive something great from my desk or from my production table, like a sled or a Eureka rewrite or something like top secret. Just got to say what that thing is. Okay, signing off.